A Jewish woman in the 1st century could lose her marriage for letting down her hair in front of other men. No trial, no argument, just uncovered hair in a public room, and by custom, that alone was enough. Mary of Bethany did exactly that. In front of everyone. Picture the room. 6 days before the Passover that will end on a cross, a house in the small village of Bethany is packed with the smell of roasted meat lamp oil, and too many bodies and too little space. Simon, a man this village used to call the leper before Jesus healed him, has thrown a dinner in Jesus' honor. Lazarus reclines at the table like it's the most ordinary evening of his life, which is remarkable because 6 days ago Lazarus was dead. Martha moves between the guests the way she always does, serving. Even the name of the village carries weight if you know where to look. Bethany in Hebrew is thought to mean house of affliction or house of the poor. It is a fitting address for this particular guest list. A man once cast out for a skin disease no one could cure. A brother who spent 4 days in a tomb before Jesus called him back out into the light. A family that has already tasted what it feels like to lose everything and get it handed back. Grief has already visited this house once this week. Tonight it is going to visit again, wearing a very different face. And Mary is not at the table at all. The room is loud before it goes quiet, cups clinking. Low conversation about the roads to Jerusalem, someone laughing near the doorway, and then one by one heads start to turn, because a smell has started rolling through the house that nobody in Bethany has ever smelled inside 4 walls before something closer to a temple than a dinner table. You find her on the floor at Jesus' feet holding a small alabaster jar. Inside it is perfume so pure, so concentrated that it costs almost a year's wages for a working man. She breaks the seal. She pours the entire jar over his feet, not a drop held back. And then before anyone in that room can finish reacting to the smell filling the house, she does something that has nothing to do with perfume at all. She reaches up, she unties her hair, and she wipes his feet with it. By the end of this, you will know why that one motion, not the money, not the scandal, not even the perfume, is the most prophetic thing that happens in this entire chapter. Because 6 days later, at another table, someone else is going to kneel down at somebody's feet holding something he was never asked to bring. And once you see what it is, you will never read this scene the same way again. But first you need to feel exactly what this cost her. You need to understand what a woman's hair actually meant in that world, because it is not what you think. In 1st century Jewish life, a rule later written down in the Mishnah made it plain. A woman who went out in public with her hair uncovered could be divorced without her husband owing her a single coin of the marriage settlement he had promised her at their wedding. Her hair was not decoration. It belonged to her husband alone or to no one at all if she was unmarried. Letting it down in front of strangers was not a small breach of fashion. It sat closer to undressing in the street. Years later, the Apostle Paul would write to a church wrestling with this very custom, and he would call a woman's hair her doxa, her glory. The one thing that was unmistakably hers to give, or to keep. Mary gave it away, in a room full of men she was not married to, without a word of explanation. Now look closely at what is inside that jar in her hands, because this detail is not an accident either. John does not simply say perfume. He reaches for 2 Greek words stacked together. Nardos pistikos, pure nard. Break the second word apart and you will find something you did not expect. Pistikos shares its root with pistis, the Greek word for faith, for trust, for something proven genuine and unmixed. This was not nard cut with cheaper oils to stretch a merchant's profit the way most perfume sold in Jerusalem's markets was handled. This was the real thing, sealed in stone, carried most likely all the way from the mountains near India, and it cost exactly what John tells you. It cost 300 denarii. A denarius was 1 day's wage for an ordinary laborer. Do the math slowly. 300 days. Nearly a full year of labor sitting in a jar. And Mary breaks the seal and empties every drop of it in a single motion. This was not John exaggerating for effect either. Decades later, the Roman writer Pliny the Elder cataloged nard among the costliest imported goods a household in the empire could own, shipped for weeks over land and sea from the mountains near India. When you picture the value of what Mary held in her hands, do not picture a nice gift. Picture a family's entire yearly income, poured out onto dusty feet, gone in the time it takes to tip a jar. Here is what most people miss when they read this story quickly. Mary did not sell the perfume and give the proceeds to the poor, which is exactly what someone else at that table is about to suggest. She did not save half of it for later. She did not measure out a careful, respectable amount. She shattered the seal and poured out the whole jar at once onto the feet of a man who, as far as most of that room could tell, was simply a traveling teacher about to walk into a city that had already tried to stone him twice. And then, with the most expensive thing she owned, running down his feet into the dust of Simon's floor, she did the one thing money could never buy back. She took down her hair, her doxa, her glory, the one possession no law in Israel could strip from her, and she used it as a towel. You should also know what was happening just outside that house while this dinner was taking place, because it changes how dangerous this whole scene really was. Days earlier, the chief priest, a man named Caiaphas, had stood before the ruling council in Jerusalem and said something he did not fully understand himself. It is better for one man to die for the people than for the whole nation to perish. He meant it as cold political math, a way to get rid of a troublemaker before Rome came down on everyone. John, writing years later, cannot resist pointing out what Caiaphas could not see in his own words. He was, without knowing it, speaking as a prophet, saying that Jesus would die for the nation. So while Mary is emptying a jar of nard onto Jesus' feet in Bethany, a warrant for his arrest and for Lazarus' death too, since a walking, breathing miracle is bad for business, is already being discussed a few miles away in Jerusalem. Mary does not know this. She only knows what she feels. But you should know it, because it means every drop of that perfume was poured out on feet that were at that very hour already marked for the grave. Stay with me, because there is a man reclining at that same table who is about to turn all of this into an accusation. His name is Judas Iscariot, and here is the accusation he throws across that fragrant room. Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor? Read only that sentence, and Judas sounds almost reasonable, compassionate even, practical. But John, writing decades after that night, long after he had watched exactly how the story ended, refuses to let Judas keep the mask on. John tells you flatly, Judas did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief and he kept the money bag, and he used to help himself to what was put into it. Here is what makes this moment so heavy. Judas is not wrong about the price. 300 denarii really could have fed a great many hungry families. He is only wrong about everything else. He is standing in a room where a man who was dead 6 days ago is eating dinner in front of him, and the only math he can do is about money. So hold these two people up against each other, because the gospel wants you to see the difference, not guess at it. This is not a story about generosity against greed. This is not a story about who loved Jesus the most. This is not at its core even a story about perfume. This is a story about two different answers to the exact same question. What do you do when you are close enough to touch God with your own hands? Mary's answer costs her 300 denarii, her dignity, and her reputation, in a village where everyone will be talking about this by morning. She gives it without being asked, without negotiating, without keeping anything back for herself. Judas's answer is coming, and you already know the number. Not 300 pieces of silver, 30. He will walk out of this very story into the dark, and sell the same man Mary just anointed for 1/10 of what she poured out in love. Two people, one dinner table, and between them the entire distance between worship and betrayal, measured out in exact currency. If a hidden detail like this one buried thread that changes how you read a whole scene is what you come to this channel for, this is a good moment to subscribe to Sacred Shadows. Because we are about to go somewhere in this chapter that most preachers never take you. Because Jesus does not rebuke Mary. He does the opposite. Leave her alone, he says. She has done this to prepare me for burial. You will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. Sit with how strange that answer actually is. Jesus does not say Mary was right about the money. He says something larger. He says she understood something the rest of the room did not. Using nothing but scent and hair and nerve, she had done something no one else at that table had done for him. She had grieved him before he died. Here is the part nobody tells you, and once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. The Greek word John chooses for what Mary does with her hair she wiped his feet is a specific verb, ekmasso. It means to wipe something dry thoroughly with care. It is not a common word. In the entire New Testament, it appears in only 2 other places. Once in Luke's Gospel, describing a different woman, an unnamed woman known for sin, who weeps at Jesus' feet in a Pharisee's house and dries her tears with her own hair, and once more 6 days after this very dinner in a room you have not reached yet. 6 days. Hold that number, because it is about to matter twice. Turn to the 13th chapter of John. It is the night before the cross. Jesus is at supper with the 12 men who have followed him for 3 years, and he gets up from the table, removes his outer robe, wraps a towel around his waist, and pours water into a basin. Then he kneels down the same posture Mary knelt in 6 days earlier in Simon's house, and washes the feet of every disciple at that table, including the feet of the man who will betray him within hours. And when he finishes each foot, John tells you exactly what Jesus does next. He wipes them. Ekmasso, the same word, the same motion, the same posture. Here is what most people never notice. 6 days before Jesus washes his disciples' feet with a towel, Mary washes his feet with her hair. She is not only performing an act of devotion. Without knowing it, she is rehearsing the exact scene Jesus is about to perform himself. A woman gives her glory the one thing the law said belonged to her alone, to wipe the feet of the Messiah. And 6 days later, the Messiah gives his own dignity, kneeling like a servant, a task so low that Jewish law said not even a Jewish slave could be forced to perform it for another Jew. To wipe the feet of ordinary, frightened, soon-to-scatter men. The stakes climb here, and they climb fast. This is no longer only about Mary's honor or even about Judas's greed. This is about what kind of king kneels down. This is about a Messiah Mashiach, the anointed one dripping in the very oil that names him, who spends the last free evening of his life on his knees with a towel, doing the one job no one else at that table would touch. Watch how the disciples react, because it tells you how radical this really was. When Jesus reaches Peter, Peter pulls his feet back. "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" he asks, half appalled. It is beneath a rabbi. It is beneath anyone at that table except the lowest servant in the house. Jesus answers him gently, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." Later. That word matters. Nobody in that room understands what they are watching, the same way nobody in Simon's house fully understood what Mary was doing 6 days before. You almost never understand a sacred moment while you are standing inside it. You only see the shape of it afterward, looking back the way you are looking back at both of these scenes right now. 2 scenes, 1 posture, 1 rare word standing guard over both of them 6 days apart, so that you would notice the echo even 2,000 years later. Now go back to the words Jesus spoke over Mary's head while the perfume was still wet on his feet. "She has kept this for the day of my burial." At the time, nobody in that room could have understood what he meant. Mary probably did not either. But follow the thread forward past the cross into the 19th chapter of John, and you will find a man named Nicodemus, the same Pharisee who once came to Jesus in secret at night, afraid to be seen stepping out into the open for the first time. He comes carrying nearly 100 Roman pounds of myrrh and aloe spices meant for burial, and together with a man named Joseph of Arimathea, he wraps Jesus' body for the tomb. The fragrance Mary poured out in worship becomes the fragrance covering a corpse 3 days later. She was not only honoring a living teacher. Without knowing it, she was anointing a king for his grave days before anyone else in that room was willing to admit he might actually die. Here is where the story takes a stranger turn, because what happened to Mary's memory afterward is almost as remarkable as what she did that night. This is not a story about a scandal that faded with time. This is not a story that ends when the perfume dries. This is not even only a story about one dinner. This is a story about how easily the truth about a woman's love can be buried under someone else's assumptions for 1,400 years. In the year 591, a pope named Gregory the Great stood up in Rome and preached a sermon that would shape the entire Western Church for centuries. In that sermon, Gregory took 3 separate women from 3 separate gospel accounts: Mary of Bethany, an unnamed sinful woman from Luke's gospel, and Mary Magdalene, out of whom Jesus had cast 7 demons, and folded all 3 into a single person, one woman, one reputation, a conflation built on almost nothing but the fact that all 3 women had touched Jesus' feet with their hair. For almost a millennium and a half, most of Western Christianity believed Mary of Bethany was a reformed prostitute. Painters painted her that way. Preachers preached her that way. It took until the year 1969 for the Vatican itself, in a quiet reform of its liturgical calendar, to formally separate the 3 women again to hand Mary of Bethany, sister of Martha and Lazarus, her own name, back apart from a sin the Bible never once assigns to her. Think about what that means. The very woman who understood the cross before anyone else at that table did, who wiped Jesus' feet with the one thing the law called sacred and untouchable, spent 1,400 years remembered for a story that was never actually hers. You have probably heard her called the reformed prostitute who anointed Jesus' feet at least once in your life, in a sermon or a painting or a film, and you were never told that the label came from a 6th century sermon, not from Scripture itself. And now the loop from the start of this video finally closes. Someone else 6 days after Mary knelt at Jesus' feet, knelt at someone else's feet holding something he was never asked to bring. It was Jesus himself on his knees with a towel doing for 12 frightened men, exactly what Mary had done for him, because love, once it has been shown to you, has a way of moving through your own hands and back out into the world. You have probably done something like this yourself, and nobody clapped for you either. You gave up something private, something costly, something that cost you your comfort or your reputation, for someone who may not have understood in that moment what it meant to you. Mary did not get applause. She got an accusation from Judas and from Jesus. 6 words that outlived every insult in that room. She has done a beautiful thing. So let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of that small, fragrant house in Bethany. First, the most expensive thing in this story was never the perfume. 300 denarii can be earned back 1 working day at a time the way it was earned in the first place. What Mary let down that night, her doxa, her glory, the one thing the law said belonged to her alone, was never for sale in the first place, and once it was given, there was no earning it back. She gave it anyway in front of a room that could have used it against her for the rest of her life. Second, if you have ever given something private, something costly, something nobody around you fully understood in the moment, a year of your life, your reputation, your own version of unbound hair in a room full of strangers, you are standing exactly where Mary stood. And Jesus' answer to her is his answer to you too. He did not need the room to understand. He only needed her to keep pouring. And third, the one to sit with the longest. 6 days after a woman knelt down and gave her glory to wipe his feet, the Son of God knelt down, himself wrapped a towel around his waist, and washed the feet of the very men who would abandon him by morning, including the feet of the one who would betray him before sunrise. The love you give away with your whole hand, without holding anything back, has a way of finding its way back into the world wearing a different face. Mary wiped his feet with her hair, not knowing she was rehearsing a burial. 6 days later, he knelt down and did the same for 12 people who did not deserve it any more than you or I do, and he did it anyway because that has always been how this kind of love works. It does not wait for you to earn it. It only waits for you to kneel down and receive it. So here is my question for you, and I want you to answer it honestly in the comments below. What is the one thing you own that would cost you the most to give away, not money, but something closer to your hair, your name, your pride, and would you let it down in front of everyone the way Mary did? If this kind of hidden detail, one word, one echo, one buried thread running quietly through the Gospels is what keeps bringing you back to this channel, stay in the shadows with us, and I will see you in the next one.